Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Epic Comic Book Wednesday. This is a collaboration between Michael K Vaughan and myself, where we combine the forces of stately Vaughan Manor and Hyde Cottage to talk about comic books every Wednesday, which is New Comic Book Day here in the United States. A theme, a character, a run, or perhaps a particular issue, like today. Mike does the picking. He picks what we're going to talk about, and I never know what he's going to pick because... in addition to everything else, he's involved in a number of ongoing reading projects. He thinks up a new one every day, and I think a couple of them revolve around reading comics. And today he picked a signpost issue of Marvel Comics' The Avengers, which will be familiar. It's one of the few comic book series that will be familiar by name to pretty much anybody in the world, thanks to a $3 billion cinematic industry. $3 billion in hard cash laid out on tables. The Avengers was a huge success as a movie. And it just kept on going, being a huge success with the various other Avengers movies, including Avengers Endgame, which I think is one of the highest grossing movies of all time, if not number one. But long before it was a comic book, long before it was a movie, it was a comic book. I myself thought forever and ever there's no way you could make a comic book out of the Avengers. I was proven wrong. I really enjoyed all of the Avengers movies. But the comic book started in the mid 1960s. It was part of the Marvel Comics renaissance created by Stan Lee with a stable of great artists, mainly Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. And that brings us quickly, not only to the issue, but to the issue. The issue with the issue. The issue is Avengers number 4. A classic of the Avengers, where the Avengers have run for 500 issues, more than that. But issue number 4 brings back the World War II character Captain America, created by Jack Kirby and the writer Joe Simon. Keep in mind that this comic was appearing in the 1960s, so there were quite a few people who still remembered World War II. It was only 20 years ago, so there were quite a few people who did. That is not true anymore. The number of people who are living memories of World War II has dwindled to a tiny handful. It's practically just David Murphy. But here that wasn't true. Here, this would have hit the stands, and a whole bunch of readers would have said, "Oh, Captain America! Oh, I know him. He's not a new character. He's not a new character at all. He's an old character. It's from before there was an actual Marvel Comics." I had this issue. There's nothing I'd like better than to hold up my copy of this issue. Of course, a mint condition copy of this issue will fetch you a pretty penny. I haven't checked it ahead of time, but it's probably very expensive to buy this brand new. I had a copy. I bought it brand new. I bought it with a bunch of other comics. I don't think long-term viewers of this channel are going to need much help guessing what happened to that copy. I read it until it was falling apart. So the copy that I eventually lost would not have been worth anything anyway. But even so, I would love to have that tattered copy. I have that tattered copy for a lot of Marvel Comics. Michael K. Vaughan has actually seen some of them. But the copy that I had of this was destroyed by an unruly crowd of beagles. I thought on that particular day that I had exhausted their energies. We'd been out forever and ever, climbing over fences and tracing along creek beds and meeting all sorts of people, and the sun was going down. We'd been out for a long time. I thought they were drained of energy. But beagles, until they get old, once they get past a certain age, usually 11 or 12, then all the energy disappears completely. But before that, they never run out of energy, and I should have remembered that because I don't either. But we got in the door. Of course, all my stuff was everywhere. They no sooner saw a vulnerable gazelle down on the savannah than they leapt on it all at once and tore it apart. All their lolling tongues were just a thing of the past. So I don't have this issue anymore, but I have the e-copy, and that's good because we're going to want to pinch some artwork and look at it. And this gives away everything on the cover. This is Stan Lee, the writer, reintroducing the World War II hero Captain America, who had a long run in a couple of comics and was fairly popular. I say fairly because people tend to forget that there were a lot of red, white, and blue patriotic American heroes at the time of Captain America. A lot of them. he stood out as being probably the most successful, but because he had the great gimmicks. First of all, he had a killer costume, better than any other patriotic costume, and also that shield. There's something about that shield. It's a great idea. Uh, but before we get to the issue, since I've already given you the groundwork for the issue and the issue with the issue, we might as well name that issue. And all those of you who have watched Epic Comic Book Wednesday on this channel a number of times are going to know what that is. Stan Lee didn't just create the renaissance of Marvel Comics, although he did do that. Okay? So if you stumble across a YouTube channel or an Amazing Heroes article that says that he was just, I don't know, cutting cucumbers in the studio kitchen while Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko wrote the comics, kindly tell them to take a long walk on a short pier. That isn't true. But in addition to that, the thing that Stan Lee did to do that, he didn't just introduce a whole bunch of superheroes. He could do that anywhere. He introduced the Stan Lee virus. It was hugely successful. The victims of the Stan Lee virus are happy when they are infected. And so it remains the standard endemic today. It is a pandemic still in comic books. And it's spread to the other comic book companies, most especially my beloved DC Comics, which have been blissfully free of the Stan Lee virus forever and ever. And the Stan Lee virus has two major symptoms. One is continuity, where the events in one issue of the Avengers or the Magnificent Seven or whatever are going to be remembered by all of the characters and have an effect on the events that come after it. And the other is verisimilitude, where Stan Lee wanted his characters to have feet of clay. He wanted them to be recognizably human people. He wanted them to have, first of all, weaknesses. It was key to him that he wanted his characters to have some sort of practical limitation. Something, he didn't do it for any kind of egalitarian reasons. He did it because it makes great storytelling. You always want to have the ability, the necessity for your hero to think up something to get out of some jam. And they can only do that if they have a problem that will get them into jams. But Stan Lee also liked to deeply humanize his characters because he wanted his comic books to reflect the world outside your window. The world outside your window doesn't have superheroes. Verisimilitude has no more place in superhero comic books than affection has in marriage. It's ridiculous. But nevertheless, it took off. Like a bottle rocket, it took off. And I want to tell you, I want to take you down memory lane here. When I saw this issue at Tro's Graduate Store, I knew already that I wanted to get it. I was already kind of sort of hooked on the Avengers. It was actually Captain America who would provide the first real magnetic pull. Because shortly after, just a year after this issue, Captain America is pretty much given the comic book. All these other people leave the team. And he has to form a new team of his own. A team of criminals. A team of people who have already appeared in other comics, but as criminals, as terrorists. He's just going to reshape them into a 4-person team, not a big team, just 4 people, not overpowered at all. And it takes place later on here, and I saw that and thought there's no way this is going to work, and it was the best comic I bought month after month for Marvel. There were no bad comics from DC at the time. There were no bad comics. They were all great. But I didn't know that at the time. And when I saw this on the newsstand, I already had a feeling of what Stan Lee was doing to comic books. I had already been reading all the other comics that he was launching, except the Hulk. And I had the gist of the Hulk already from friends who read it. I knew already about the Stan Lee virus. I wasn't calling it that then, but I knew what it was. And that his characters have to be tortured somehow or flawed somehow. And I remember thinking, before I read this issue, well, how's that going to work? Captain America's not flawed. He comes from an earlier age. He comes from an age when heroes weren't that way. Isn't he going to stick out? I mean, it's weird enough anyway that you're having a flag-waving World War II character in a comic in the early 60s. But on top of that, isn't he going to stick out in every other way? I mean, he doesn't have any of those personal hang-ups, as Stan Lee would call them, and he also doesn't have any gimmicks. He doesn't have the gimmick that would put him in a bind. He's a superb acrobat wearing a flag and carrying an indestructible shield. Although at the time when this Captain America is showing up in the Avengers, his shield was not. indestructible, all this mythos that has attached to it since then of a vibranium adamantium alloy, a one of a kind thing, totally invulnerable to everything. That hadn't thought that Captain America lost shields in these early issues. It was just basically bulletproof. But I, I don't know. For a brief naive moment, I thought Stan Lee would buck the trend of his own virus, of the Stan Lee virus, but I was wrong. Nope, I was wrong. But first, we have to get to the issue, which starts off with a whole bunch of self-conscious proclamations from Stan Lee. There we have a symbolic splash page where Captain America is proudly striding out to join the ranks of the Avengers. And there's a couple of editorial interruptions here. An editor's note saying, "We sincerely suggest you save this issue. We feel you will come to treasure it in time to come." Treasure it, literally. If you kept this in good condition, which no one I knew did, but if you did, this would be able to fetch you, well, what? You'll be able to tell me in the comments before I can look it up. Several $1,000s, at least, I would say. But there's another editorial box as well. The Mighty Marvel Comics Group is proud to announce that Jack Kirby drew the original Captain America during the golden age of comics. And now he draws it again. Also, Stan Lee's first script during those fabled days was Captain America, and now he authors it again. Thus, the chronicle of comicdom turns full circle, reaching a new pinnacle of greatness. I was, of course, not yet born when this issue came out, obviously, since I'm 28 years old. Had I been born and maybe been reading this as as a 20-something, I would have pointed out that you cannot reach a new pinnacle if you're bringing something full circle. But that's all right, because this isn't part of the story. This is just a symbolic designation of what's happening. Instead, the story starts with action. It's a, 7-panel page. You don't want Jack Kirby to do a 7-panel page if you can help it. He's good no matter what. You could tell him to do a 20-panel page and he'd be good. But you want it to have room to move, to breathe. And the first panel, here we can take advantage of the pinchable artwork, is the Avengers fighting the Submariner, Prince Namor the Submariner, who I might point out, and I'll point this out again in the course of the issue, is also a character from the Golden Age of comics. But he's for those of you who don't know comic books at all, first of all, I don't know why you'd be watching this video, but he is a superpowered mutant, the very first Marvel mutant. He is the son of a human being and Homo Moranus, a blue-skinned sea folk. He has the pale skin of his father. He has the ability to breathe underwater of his mother's people. But he also has mutant abilities. He's incredibly strong. He's super strong, 85 tons. And he has little wings on his ankles that allow him to fly. He's invulnerable to anything but heavy shell fire. More than that, sometimes. And he's also got a mad-on for the human race, which is an aspect of Prince Namor that was never far away in the original 1940s comics, 1930s and 40s comics. He has a conflicted relationship with humanity. 3 decades after this book came out, 1 decade after this book came out, a Marvel writer called Roy Thomas decided to flesh in that World War II mythology of all of these characters that were part of Timely Comics back in the day, and gives us all sorts of rationales for Prince Namor that, well, yes, I have no great love for humanity, but I recognize that the Nazis are the worst of the bunch, so I will throw in my lot with the All-Winter Squad, with the heroes of my day. But here we have the Avengers fighting him, and mysteriously saying, "We're too late. He's getting away. He's 6 feet away." He's 6 feet away from these heroes. It looks like Giant Man. That guy is Giant Man. He can grow to 15 feet tall, but in a pinch he can go to 25 feet tall. It looks like he's at 15 feet tall there. So he could literally grow to reach the Submariner and grab him out of the sky. Thor is the Norse god of thunder. For some reason he's missing Prince Namor with his mystic hammer, but he could throw it again. Or fly to Prince Namor, and the Iron Man can fly. So he's not getting away. They're not too late. It's a little weird, but he does get away, and flies down into the depths. See, there we have. This is what I mean. It doesn't matter if you squeeze Jack Kirby into 7 panels on a page. You're still going to get stuff like this. So it's not going to matter. He's still great. He's still the king, no matter what. But Namor is furious. He has tried. This issue follows up on an attempt of his to try to destroy the Avengers and destroy mankind with the help of the Hulk, who was an original member of the Avengers but is not anymore. And it doesn't work. He kind of loses, and he's furious about it. He's destroying things in a sub-oceanic temper tantrum. When he swims for a long time, he ends up, where are we? The North Sea. So he swims for a long time really fast, but he ends up on an ice floe with Eskimos. Because keep in mind, as far as Stan Lee was concerned, that particular hot dog vendor way out in Flatbush is Ultima Thule. That is as far away from, that is the far ends of the earth as far as Stan Lee is concerned. So if it's snowy, and probably there are Eskimos, I guess there would be. And they are worshiping a mysterious figure in ice. Prince Namor throws a classic Prince Namor temper tantrum, grabs the figure, and hurls it far away from him. That's how strong this guy is. He hurls this gigantic chunk of ice a mile out into the ocean, effortlessly. Because he says, you should be worshiping me, me. I'm the one you should care about. And he throws another temper tantrum, just bashing things left, right, and center. And we leave him there as we watch this figure trapped in ice floating out into the ocean. And the ice is starting to melt. It would not do that in the North Sea. It would take about 2 years for it to do that. But instead it takes about 2 minutes, because right on Prince Namor's tail, I guess he's not getting away. I assume the Avengers are chasing him. Right on his tail, they are in their mysterious sub-sea vehicle. It's called a submarine, I believe. No, they call it Stan Lee calls it an undersea craft because it has windows. And they spot a body floating along. It's not in ice anymore. It's just a body in military fatigues. And they open a hatch, and Giant Man reaches out a giant hand to pull this figure in. How does that happen? How is Giant Man's head not blown apart by the pressure? How is he not drowned? How is everybody else on board not drowned? No idea. But somehow it's a magical hatch, and they bring him inside, and lo and behold, his clothing is in tatters and is revealing a bright, colorful costume underneath with a shield hugged to his chest. And the Avengers, keep in mind, like I said, this is just 20 years. The Avengers, of course, recognize this. Tony Stark would have seen this figure as a kid. Hank Pym, who is Giant Man, would have seen this figure as a kid. Thor, let's not talk about Thor's connection with Captain America over time. But they say, the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, that little insect-sized girl, says, wait, don't you recognize it? It's the famous red, white, and blue garb of Captain America. And Thor says, can this really be the famous shield of the once mighty crime fighter? And Iron Man says, and his face mask with the proud letter A on it. It must be him. And just as he's saying that, the Wasp realizes that his eyelids are fluttering, that he's waking up. I want to point out, if you get frozen solid in a block of ice, you can't breathe. It doesn't put you in suspended animation. You're not a frog. You suffocate. And even if by some rationale you don't, when you thaw out of that ice and you're just floating as a body in the ocean, you drown. Unless Captain America doesn't need to breathe. Unless he doesn't need to breathe. Also, being frozen in a block of ice, whether you're in suspended animation or not, would completely destroy your body. So is he invulnerable too? Stan Lee wasn't thinking about it. He just came up with some way to get this character 20 years forward in time without aging him 20 years. Captain America wakes up in trauma. I sighed a little when I saw this. I had no idea how bad it was going to get, but I sighed a little. Bucky, look out! Because he's still trapped in the memories of when he went into the water. And he bolts off the table. But then he instantly remembers, oh, wait, no. Bucky's dead. People who were of a certain age or who were trading comics all those 20 years remembered Captain America's adventures in World War II with his teen sidekick Bucky Barnes. And now we're learning that Bucky is dead, that he did not survive World War II. Which in Marvel Comics, especially Marvel superhero comics, would make him alone. It would make him unique. Everyone else lives through World War II. All of them do. He says, where am I? How did I get here? Who are you? And Iron Man says, that's what we were about to ask you. And he says, who am I? For the moment, I had almost forgotten myself. But I am not lucky enough to forget forever. To forget that I was once the man the world called Captain America. And he walks over and puts his cowl back on and stands there. I'm not lucky enough to forget forever. So the Captain America who wakes up from suspended animation is not the Captain America who went into suspended animation. That character who went into the block of ice was an optimistic World War II hero with no hang-ups. He had not yet been touched by the Stan Lee virus, but when he comes out of that block of ice, he's already got the Stan Lee virus. He is lucky enough. He's not lucky enough to forget forever. He wants to, but he can't. Because his superhero identity is sad. It's sad. And the Avengers they don't quite know what to do. They don't quite believe him. I mean, yes, it's pretty convincing, but why aren't you any older? And they have a brief tussle with him. This is necessary with Marvel Comics superheroes. Whenever they meet, they have to fight, at least for a few minutes, before they settle down. And they do. And Captain America is pretty good at defending himself, as Captain America would be. Trained by the best, trained also in World War II, and of course, if you retroactively read in all the adventures that Roy Thomas gave him as a member of the superhero team called the Invaders, and then the All-Winner Squad, then this Captain America, even though he's young, has already faced all kinds of things, had more adventures than any of these people except Thor. They settle him down, and they talk to him, and he kind of sort of figures it out, and he figures it out with a flashback. And the flashback is great Kirby. It's just one page. But look at that top panel. Let me turn this around and show you. Look at that. Oh, man. That is just great. That is just classic Kirby. That is Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, for some reason, in their fatigues. They're not in their superhero costumes. They are chasing this plane with a bomb on it, and Bucky barely reaches it and realizes that he's not going to be able to get off in time. And he's right. And the plane explodes. And Steve Rogers is blown into the ocean. Where he says, as for me, I didn't care if I lived or died. I struck the water off the coast of Newfoundland and plummeted like a rock. And Bucky's face etched before me. And that is the last thing I remember. He's gone. And with all my power, all my strength, I couldn't save him. So why does he wake up wondering where Bucky is? Why does he need to remember that Bucky's dead? Well, it's a wonder that he remembers any of this, because he's been pickled on ice for 20 years. But he says, as for the rest, some fantastic stroke of fate, I must have been frozen in an ice floe and then found by the Eskimos who thought I was a supernatural object. Then all those years of being in a state of suspended animation must have prevented me aging. No mention here of the explanation that will be used in Marvel Comics when they gently retcon this origin story, which is the super soldier serum that makes Steve Rogers into Captain America in the first place. We never know what that serum is. We never quite know what its limits are. We know that it's virtually unique. The man who created it was killed in the act of making Captain America, but we don't know quite what it does. And that has been the backdoor that has allowed Marvel Comics writers to fill in some of the problems that I'm having with this issue. That's how Captain America would go into suspended animation. That's how he would be able to float 20, 30 feet below the surface of the freezing cold ocean without drowning. It's not much of an explanation. And just when the writers offer it as a fig leaf so that you can sort of understand, that you can sort of make your peace with this character being alive 20 years later, writers have since gone on to make that super soldier form into just any kind of get out of jail free card that they need, including one really good Captain America story in which he's shunted off to an alternate reality and thinks he might be there forever. And it turns out that he doesn't age. It's never given an explanation. He just says, oh, it must be the super soldier serum that is stopping me from aging. The Avengers eventually get to New York Harbor. I would have liked some scenes of them talking to Captain America on the way, but they get to New York Harbor and they get off first to a waiting crowd of reporters. I think there's a bit of showmanship here involved. I think it's not said in the story, but it's a natural inference that they have told Captain America that they want to unveil him. Of course, he's known all over the world. They want to get off first and then unveil him. But there's a flash of light, and then suddenly they are turned into stone statues. All in positions of surprise. They don't look like heroic statues. They look like people have been turned into statues at just that moment. And yet, nobody thinks that. Literally nobody thinks that. What is the reaction of the press when this happens? They say, hey, Pete, look, what do you make of that? Oh, probably some kind of trick the Avengers used to duck out of an interview. There's a pretty crummy trick to pull on us after all day waiting for an interview. Let's go find them. They couldn't have gotten far. They're standing right in front of you. You just watched them get petrified. But they're not the only ones. Captain America wonders what's going on here. No, they're not giving me the signal to make my debut. So he walks out. Well, everyone's gone. The pier is deserted. But why would they dash off without me? Strange. Those statues must be in honor of the Avengers. But they're not all sculpted in typical poses. Oh, well, it's no concern of mine. People see these statues of the Avengers going, where statues have never been, and think, it's no big deal. I wonder where the Avengers are. He walks his way towards the UN building. He walks his way up the Avenue of the Americas. He walks his way into Manhattan and is noticed right away. People notice him right away. He says the women are still beautiful, but the hairstyles have changed. But they're all noticing, that's Captain America. My older brother, my father, talked about him. And it's a wonderful moment. He meets a cop, a beat cop, who says, wait, I know you. Oh, no, it can't be. It's impossible. But I can't be wrong. I saw you once when I was a kid. I never forgot it. This cop has seen Captain America. And Captain America, who is very sad about that fact, he's very sad about being here. He has caught the Stan Lee virus. Says, no, officer, you're not mistaken. I am Captain America. And the officer says, all these years, all of us, your fans, all your admirers, we thought you were dead. But you've come back just when the world has need of such a man, just like fate planned it this way. What on earth does that mean, Stan Lee? Oh, I'd love to have you here to ask you. What does that mean when the world has need of such a man? Does perhaps the United States need one more person to napalm innocent Vietnamese villages? Is that what we need Captain America for? Is he going to push Vietnamese farmers out of flying helicopters at 30,000 feet? Is that what he's going to do? Or maybe he's going to be sent to South America to overturn and kill the winners of democratic elections that we don't like. But anyway, the cop finishes up by saying, forgive me, Cap, will ya? I seem to have something in my eye. That's a wonderful moment. That is the reaction that Captain America would have if he showed up. It's, in fact, I hate, no offense to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, but this is an example where this very moment is done much better in a miniseries called Marvels that actually dramatizes the moment when suddenly out of nowhere Captain America is back in the world. It's even better than this, far more effective than this. This is not all that effective. I mean, it's great writing on Stan Lee's part, but look, there are no backgrounds. It's just there's precious little in the way of artwork here. Captain America gets directions to a hotel and is in a room at the hotel. I don't know how that would work. I don't think he had any money. He's in his costume. He might have had money in his fatigues, but they've been destroyed, and he wouldn't have enough money anyway. But he instead encounters the marvel of television. You young people who are watching this video who were born in the 21st century, should prepare yourself. He is saying that it's incredible, that television is incredible, how he would have loved to have it when he was growing up. But he's looking at that gigantic wooden box with a tiny little screen in the middle. That is a television. That's your iPad. That's what it was. He takes his gloves off, takes his boots off. He is just, he's doing what Stan Lee superheroes do best. He's moping and feeling sorry for himself. What happens next? Can't return to my career as Captain America. It would be meaningless without Bucky. I don't belong in this age, in this year. No place for me. If only Bucky were here. If only. Yeah, we're going to have a nice fun, Captain America. And who shows up at the door? Well, it's not Bucky Barnes, but we're told that he's like him to be a twin. It's Rick Jones, who we've met before. Some of you were traumatized by my review of Avengers #1. This is Avengers #4, and Rick Jones is back. Now, if Rick Jones is he's the Hulk's sidekick. He's about to become Captain America's sidekick. He's this teenage boy that is just for some reason involved with the Avengers. And if Rick Jones is here, That signals one thing more strongly than anything else. It signals that rampant homoerotic undertones. So Rick Jones is a member, maybe the leader, of a steaming up the sheets young group of teenagers called the Teen Brigade. And also, well, I mean, he walks into a hotel room. He sees a costumed man 10 years older than him who reaches out immediately to him with extreme affection as Bucky and grabs him. It's unbelievable. You're like his twin brother. Your voice, your face, everything. You could be Bucky's double. That's got to be kind of creepy. And it gives Captain America a second wind of hope. That at least I've got something to do. The Avengers are missing. They're not really missing. Their statues are right there on the dock. He says, I didn't mean to throw you a curve by calling you Bucky. You see, he once was a close friend of mine, but he's gone now. I was wasting time mourning him, but you've suddenly made me realize that life goes on. In a way, Bucky can still live again. Okay, that's kind of creepy. Obviously post-traumatic stress disorder, but it focuses Captain America, and when Captain America focuses, he's at his best. And Stan Lee captures it perfectly. Perfectly. Because when he puts his cowl and his gloves back on, he starts giving commands. He says, pictures were taken on the event of the Avengers at the dock. Get going. I want to study them. He just assumes that he will tell Rick Jones what to do, and Rick Jones will obey it. Rick Jones even says, all of a sudden he's changed. He's acting like a guy who's used to being obeyed and fast, and that is true. Captain America has never been a member of a team that he did not lead. And Rick Jones, he comes back minutes later with those pictures. How does he do that? They're developing them in a darkroom. How does he get reporters to hand over their negatives? He somehow does, and it only takes him minutes to do. How it took him all morning to find Captain America. How does he find these various reporters? But he finds them, and he gets them to hand over their negatives, and Captain America blows them up to see this. A mysterious man in sunglasses pointing a gun that obviously turned the Avengers into stone rather than a camera. The people all around this guy are trained journalists. They're newsmen. They don't notice it. They don't think, hey, wait a minute. We just stumbled across a really big story. Somebody just attacked the Avengers. Now, they don't think that. Captain America says to Rick Jones that the number one thing we need to do now is find this guy. That would not be possible. In Manhattan, 2 million people, that would not be possible. It would be random chance. You could look for years and not find him without any clues other than what he looks like. But Rick Jones says, rather predictably, that if we're going to start canvassing the dock side, we're going to need the Teen Brigade. So he gets on his ham radio and calls them, and they start well, they start cruising around all the neighborhoods of Manhattan looking for men. But they don't find them. They don't see what they want, I guess. Oh, the Teen Brigade. How I wish they had a comic of their own. Instead, it's Captain America, who just does find this guy. Just looking in a window, finds this guy. And he bursts through the window. Look at that. Kirby doing Captain America. Just incredible. And there are a whole bunch of guys with guns in the room, and they open fire. They have no chance. An entire generation of trained Nazi soldiers had no chance against Captain America. But it does give Jack Kirby a chance to show what he can do with Captain America action sequences, which he's always good at. Always. Was it Tales to Astonish or Tales to Suspense? That started when Captain America really took off for Marvel Comics, where Jack Kirby did the artwork. Go ahead. Oh, you knocked over the Sasquatch, baby. So the action sequences in the Kirby issues of those are incredible. Just amazing. But here, Captain America is fighting these men until he gets to this guy who's pointing the very gun that turned the Avengers to stone. But Captain America is acting too fast and knocks the gun out of his hand and pulls off his mask to reveal that he is a space alien. And the guys who were fighting Captain America say, holy cow, look what we've been working for. Let me out of here. I've had it. Me and the straight and narrow from now on. But why were they working for this guy anyway? He tells his story. I come from a far distant galaxy. My name would be meaningless to you as Earth tongues cannot even pronounce it. Centuries ago, due to an engine failure, my spaceship crashed on Earth, embedding itself deep in the bottom of the sea. I meant Earthlings no harm. I roamed your planet seeking someone to help me free my ship, but those I saw feared me, attacked me. In self-defense, I used my ray gun on them, turning them to stone for 100 of your Earth hours. And we see Greek hoplites and a bust of an old Greek warrior. So that's not centuries ago. That's millennia ago. Captain America says, well, okay, but why are you here? And why? All right, that's your story, but why did you attack the Avengers? And this anonymous alien, why did he have these gunmen with him? Why did he do that? He tells Captain America that he just recently was found by the Submariner, who told him, attack the Avengers with this gun. It's not what the Submariner would do. It's not anything like his character, but it brings, I guess, the two plot pieces together. The alien goes to Captain America, drags him to the Avengers, and they are turned back into flesh and blood. They would have anyway after 100 hours, but they're turned back into flesh and blood. And we are told that the Prince Namor, the Submariner, is watching all of this on his undersea scanner and sees that his plan has failed. Keep in mind, he has been saying all of this issue that he is alone. All of his undersea people seem to be gone. They seem to have disappeared. He will search for them. He'll spend the rest of his life doing that. He doesn't do that. He spends most of his time trying to kill the Avengers for no reason whatsoever. But that is his mission, to find his people. It's not his main mission because he hires this alien guy, or threatens this alien guy, or whatever, to attack the Avengers. There is no reason why this alien guy would agree to do that. Once he's out of the Submariner's immediate range, there's no reason he'd agree to do it. And also, we're supposed to believe this alien was just living on Earth for thousands of years, waiting for someone to help him with his spaceship? Why didn't he settle down, start a family, amass a fortune? Why is he hiding behind a plastic face mask, hiring gunmen in New York City? But Prince Namor decides, this will teach me a lesson. Whatever the Submariner must do, he must do alone. I am still the most powerful mutant on Earth, half human, half sea creature. My brain is agile, my energy inexhaustible. I must keep striking until the Avengers are destroyed. Why? Why do you want to do that? But a minute later, he sees his own people. He has, by coincidence, he coincidentally found this alien. The Avengers coincidentally saw a body floating outside their submarine. Captain America coincidentally finds this alien without the help of the Teen Brigade. Probably looked only for a few minutes until they all found the right men. And now there's another coincidence. By coincidence, when the moment Prince Namor realizes that this alien gambit has failed, he finds his own people, which has been his life quest that we've been told about. He says, they see me, they are turning, they bow in loyal acknowledgement of my imperial presence, and now Prince Namor is no longer alone. Wonderful. Okay, so that wraps up Submariner's story. And we go back to the Avengers, who are now looking for this alien craft. It is just sitting there. It's just sitting there. It wouldn't be. It'd be a mile down at least, but it's just sitting there. And a giant man can't move it. He can't move it at all. For some reason, Thor doesn't want to get wet. Thor can simply fly down there and lift it himself, but instead, he uses his hammer to draw it magnetically out of the ground. And the alien is super happy about this. He goes in to effect repairs. He's happy to have his ship back. The Avengers are thinking, well, that's great. Captain America has been thrilled to see them in action and approaches Giant Man to say, you seem like a great team. I was wondering, when suddenly the ground erupts. Because Prince Namor has decided to attack the Avengers with his warriors, who are wearing bubbles so that they can breathe the air on the surface. Where they got those, I have no idea. They've been wandering looking for Prince Namor under the water. They had no intention of attacking the Avengers on land. How could he even convince them that this was the thing they wanted to do? They just obey him, and they attack en masse. The Avengers are split up. Giant Man and Captain America are briefly knocked into the ocean. Thor is preoccupied with fighting all of Namor's men, while Namor fights Iron Man. These two have a brief, inconclusive fight. Iron Man is no match for Prince Namor, the Submariner. This Iron Man. Later on, he gets upgrades in his armor, becomes a little bit more powerful. But in this case, he's just a guy in a suit of armor. no super tech, no incredibly powerful repulsor race. So he knows that he can't last long with the Submariner. But he hears calls of distress from his men because Thor is mopping the ground with them. So he decides, fire your weapons at Thor. All of you, all at the same time. Again, not what the Submariner would do. There's no honor in it at all. But they do it, and it doesn't have any effect. The Submariner attacks Thor on his own. But just like Iron Man has no chance against the Submariner has no chance against Thor, and he knows it. But they fight anyway. And the Avengers eventually more or less recombine and are fighting Prince Namor on their own while they're being watched. Giant Man re-enters the fray, but Captain America does not. He is sulking and watching. I might as well see what these people can do. He's not planning on interfering, even though Prince Namor and his men are giving the Avengers a hard time, until he sees that Prince Namor has ordered his men to kidnap Rick Jones and hold him as a hostage. You'll surrender or he'll pay the cost. I'll kill him if you don't do what I say. Again, not Prince Namor at all. That's not his character. But Captain America sees that, and it's, no, you can't. I was willing to watch the rest of this, but I'm not willing to watch that. So he leaps in to free Rick and attack the Submariner's men, which causes the Submariner in a rather famous panel to attack him. I don't know who you are, but you can't interfere. And just as they are about to fight, Captain America says he's stronger than me, but I'll find a way to outmaneuver him, when the island erupts again, because the alien has fixed his craft and is taking off into space without so much as a thank you. The Submariner says, well, no one can survive that. So he just swims off with his men. And we are left with the Avengers and Captain America. And he finally gets to finish what he was about to say, which is that I'd kind of like to join your team. We got a neat little visual echo here that Jack Kirby provides. Giant Man is wondering, well, we're not all together. Where's the Wasp? And she shows up right in his face to say that she could have to powder her nose. But it's a neat little echo of her hovering over Captain America's face earlier in the issue. And they invite Captain America to be a member of the team, to be a member of the Avengers. He is the first inductee. And Rick Jones is sitting there, well, what about the Hulk? I was his special +1, but I kind of like this Cap guy. But if I become his special +1, won't the Hulk be jealous? Who knows what he might do? And that's how they end the issue. But nothing in life is certain, and we must take the good and the bad as fate deals them out. One thing is certain, though. Next issue of the Avengers will have more superheroes, supervillains, and super thrills, just as you want them. The end. The number one question here is why on earth these two don't recognize each other. Captain America and the Submariner. We're not talking just about the later comic book that Roy Thomas invented, a team called the Invaders. We're talking about the All Winners Squad, which was a World War II comic book. Captain America and the Submariner know each other. They've teamed up. They have fought against Nazis, probably for the whole of the war. So the number one question here in this moment for this comic book has always been, why don't they recognize each other? But it's never bothered me that much. Captain America has been frozen in a block of ice for 20 years. He might have bits and pieces of his memory that don't come back to him quite as quickly as the death of Bucky. And also, when the Submariner is reintroduced into the Marvel Comics world, this isn't the issue where it happens. He's reintroduced in the Fantastic Four, and we're shown in that issue that he has amnesia, that he has severe memory problems, doesn't remember who he is at first, is living as a bum down in the Bowery in New York City. So he has memory issues too. So it's never bothered me all this much. It would have been a lot nicer. It would have been a lot greater. Stan Lee includes that note at the beginning of the issue saying that he wrote the Submariner and that he wrote Captain America and Jack Kirby drew it. Advertising the fact, in other words, that they know this guy's continuity. And yet, despite continuity being one of the symptoms of the Stan Lee virus, this is one of the biggest fails of continuity in early Marvel history. These two characters know each other. It should have been a completely different scene. It should have been, oh my God, it's you, Namor? And Namor should have been saying, oh my God, we thought you were dead. We were not just, bystanders on the streets of New York. We were your colleagues in arms. We thought you were dead. It should have been a better moment than this. It would have reworked the ending of the comic, but that would have worked. But anyway, that is That is our issue. For some reason, Mike picked Avengers #4, the issue where Captain America returns to current Marvel continuity as a member of the Avengers. Now, Stan Lee, I rail on him for the Stan Lee virus. Verisimilitude and continuity have no place in superhero comics at all. But uh, he made it work. And when he usually when he had a decision, when he made a creative decision, it was fantastic. Unlike the people who the Dude Bros claim wrote these comics, who couldn't make a good creative decision if their life depended on it. Stan Lee almost always did. And he thought, bring Captain America back and put him on the Avengers, not as a guest star, but as a team member. I bet that'll be popular with the marching ranks of merry marveldom assembled. And boy, oh boy, was he right. Oh my God, was he right. Captain America quickly came to overshadow all the other characters in this book and take it over, and has been ever since absolutely synonymous with a team he did not found. A team, unlike in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the team was founded by other people. He joined it. But it doesn't matter. He became absolutely synonymous with the team, and it started with this issue. And the letters poured in. They poured in. Keep Cap on the team. So there you go. That's Avengers #4. It's pretty crappy in a lot of the ways that the Stan Lee virus will make a comic crappy, but I loved revisiting it. Absolutely. So this is not a time when Michael K. Vaughan and I are really disagreeing. I don't know what he said in his video, but I'll leave a link to it down below. He always makes his video much earlier than mine. I make a point of not looking at them so that I don't have his video in my mind when I'm making mine. But all the same points can be made. The central point of this issue that most people talk about is, why don't Captain America and the Submariner recognize each other? When they went through World War II together, you'd think that would make an imprint. I'm wondering why Captain America was attacking that super plane with a bomb on it without his shield. Why was his shield taped to his chest when he did that? Why didn't they change into their togs? I know it's the reveal. It's that famous scene where they see his costume. They find his costume under the tatters of his clothing. I know they want that. Also, maybe logistically, because otherwise, if it's Captain America encased in a block of ice, Submariner might wonder about that. He might have thought, oh, well, it's not just a person. It's a friend of mine who's now a popsicle. But anyway, it's a classic issue. I was happy to revisit it. So we'll see what happens next week. I'm not at the steering wheel. So I'll wrap this up for now. I'll see you all then. Thank you, BookTube.